I arrived 5 minutes early. Not because I was eager, because I needed a second to breathe. It was my mom's 60th birthday, and deep down, I still hoped this time would be different. Maybe someone would actually be happy I showed up. But as soon as I stepped into that restaurant, I knew I was wrong. The private room was glowing warm, lighting polished silverware champagne glasses already half empty. The laughter hit me first. Loud. Familiar. The kind of laughter that reminded me I was on the outside looking in. My daughter Lila held my hand tighter. "Mom," she whispered, "are we late?" I forced a smile. "No, baby, we're right on time." But we weren't. The party had started without us. I looked around. There they were. My brother Nathan, his wife Stacy, their two sons. Already eating. Already celebrating. No one stood up. No one waved us over. Not even my mom. Lila tugged on my sleeve. "Can I get spaghetti?" I nodded. "You can get anything you want, sweetheart." And then came the voice I was dreading. Stacy looked up, her smile as fake as the diamonds on her wrist. We weren't expecting her to show up. Or her kid. Just loud enough for me to hear it. Just quiet enough for her to deny it later. My stomach dropped. But I didn't flinch. Because I've heard worse. From them. Nathan didn't even look at me. He just kept cutting into his steak like I wasn't standing there. Like Lila wasn't watching every second of this. I scanned the table. No chairs for us. Literally. No chairs. Not a single spot saved. They had counted us out before we even arrived. And yet I was still standing there smiling, pretending this was normal. Because that's what I've always done. Smile. Pretend. Swallow it down. But Lila, she's just a kid. And she was starting to understand. Her grip on my hand tightened just slightly. And that's when I felt it. That quiet, familiar burn in my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger. Disappointment. Again. Like clockwork. And we hadn't even sat down yet. I stood there for a second too long, scanning the table again. No chairs. Not one. They'd ordered their wine started on the appetizers. And never even thought about us. I cleared my throat. "Looks like we're missing a couple seats." Nathan didn't look up. He just shrugged like it was no big deal. "We had to confirm numbers. You never RSVP'd." I blinked. Seriously, I had the texts. I literally confirmed 2 weeks ago. But in this family, the truth only matters when it benefits them. Lila looked up at me, her eyes starting to water. "Mom, it's okay. I can sit on your lap." That broke something inside me, but I stayed calm. I raised a hand and got the waiter's attention. "Can we get 2 more chairs, please?" The waiter was kind, but even he looked confused, like, how do you forget 2 guests? He squeezed the chairs into the tightest corner of the table between the wall and a potted plant. It was like trying to pretend we belonged without actually making room for us. I helped Lila sit. She tried so hard to be polite, to be quiet. But her little voice cracked when she leaned toward me and whispered, "Can I still get the pasta?" I nodded. "Of course, baby. Anything you want." And just like that, the moment should have passed. We could have moved on. But of course, Stacy couldn't help herself. She didn't even look at us when she said it. We already ordered. Hope she's not expecting us to cover it. The words landed like a slap. Sharp. Cold. Calculated. And still no one said anything. Not Nathan. Not my mom. Not even the cousins who were staring straight at their plates like they didn't hear it. I didn't respond. Not out loud anyway. But something inside me cracked. It was small, barely there. Like a tiny splinter in your palm doesn't seem like much, but you know it's only going deeper. I looked over at Lila. She was trying to fold her napkin like the others, trying so hard to pretend she didn't notice how unwanted we were. That's when I decided. I wasn't gonna explode. I wasn't gonna cry. I was gonna remember. every word, every look, every seat they never saved for us. Because one day this dinner would mean something else. One day I'd stop asking to be included and start choosing to walk away. But for now, I let them think they'd won. Let them enjoy their $80 seafood towers and their smug little smiles. I stayed quiet. But the silence wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of the end. I don't know what hurt more, that they didn't save us a seat, or that no one even thought to apologize. But honestly, I should have expected it. Because this wasn't new. This wasn't even surprising. This is what it's always been. Me on the sidelines. Them pretending that I'm not part of the story. And for so long, I played along. I kept the peace. Bit my tongue. Paid the debts. Covered the messes. Nathan was always the favorite. He could do no wrong. Even when I was the one wiring him money to cover rent. Even when I took care of his kids during his divorce. Even when I was grieving my own husband. Alone. They didn't show up for me when Mark died. Not once. No flowers. No card. Not even a phone call from my mom. But when Stacy got a flat tire on the highway, everyone acted like it was a national emergency. And tonight was supposed to be about Mom, her 60th birthday. I had hoped naively that maybe she'd actually look at me, ask about my life, notice her granddaughter sitting 2 seats away. But instead she leaned in toward Stacy, grinning ear to ear, asking about some new spa in Scottsdale, talking facials and hot stone massages, while Lila sat quietly coloring on the back of a paper menu. I kept smiling, nodding, swallowing it down, until the waiter came by. "Are you ready to order, ma'am?" I looked at Lila. She lit up when she saw the lobster ravioli. Something about it reminded her of the cooking show we watched together. She looked at me like she was asking permission to hope. I nodded. "We'll have the lobster ravioli," I said. "Make it 2. That's when Nathan finally looked up, eyebrows raised, voice dipped in mock concern. "You can afford that I didn't blink? Didn't break? Didn't let him see even a flicker of what I felt?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I can afford respect." He didn't say anything after that. The table got quiet, which told me everything. Respect was the one thing they never thought I'd demand. They were fine with me being useful, convenient, quiet, but not equal, and certainly not someone who pushes back. And right then in that moment, I realized I wasn't the problem anymore. I never was. I just finally stopped pretending that their silence was love. And maybe, just maybe, that scared them more than anything. The rest of the dinner passed like a slow boiling silence. No one spoke to us. No one asked Lila how school was. No one asked me anything, actually. And I didn't offer. Because the moment I opened my mouth, I knew I'd get that same tight-lipped smile from Stacy or the dramatic sigh from my mom, like I'd just ruined her day by breathing too loudly. But I held the line. I cut Lila's ravioli. I let her tell me about her science project, even when no one else was listening. Even when they were all talking over her like she wasn't even there. By the time dessert came, I was already mentally halfway out the door. I was tired, but not defeated. Then the check arrived. The waiter placed it gently in the middle of the table in one of those little black leather folders. Polite. Neutral. Nobody moved. And then, of course, Nathan grabbed it, smirked, and slid it across the table toward me. "You're the one with no kids to raise, right?" My blood went cold. Lila was sitting right there. I looked at her. She was watching me. Not scared, just waiting. I took the check, didn't even open it, and calmly slid it across the table, straight to my mother. "It's her birthday," I said. "Her treat." That's when the gasping started. Mom's mouth dropped open like I'd slapped her. "How dare you," she started, but I cut her off. "How dare I what? Show up, feed my kid, sit in a chair that should have already been there." She blinked, stunned. Stacy stood wine glass in hand, her voice thick with self-righteousness. "We all know who the drama queen is." I leaned in, elbows on the table, voice low and razor sharp. You haven't earned a crown in your life. The room froze. Even the waiter hesitated as he refilled someone's water glass. Nathan let out a fake laugh. Wow. That's who you're gonna be tonight. I stayed still, because what I wanted to say would have turned that restaurant into a crime scene. What I needed to say was enough. I've been quiet for years, paid your bills, watched your kids, covered your chaos, and this is the thanks I get. You try to humiliate me. On my mother's birthday, in front of my daughter. No one responded. Stacy's smile slipped. Nathan looked away. And my mom, she just sat there, frozen, like she couldn't believe I had the nerve to speak. But the truth was, that nerve, it's all I had left. And I was done wasting it on people who used silence as a weapon. So I picked up my napkin, dabbed my mouth, and sat back like I was finally comfortable. Because the storm they tried to throw at me, I'd been surviving worse ones for years. And now, I wasn't afraid of thunder anymore. The next morning, my phone lit up like it was on fire. Text after text, call after call, voicemails that I didn't even bother listening to. Nathan, you embarrassed Mom. Stacy, hope you're proud of ruining dinner. And my mother? You'll pay for this. No good morning. No, can we talk? Just accusations, blame, the same cycle they've run for years like clockwork. But this time, I didn't respond. I dropped the phone face down on the counter, poured Lila her cereal, and took a breath that didn't feel like borrowed air. By the evening, I thought the tantrum had passed. I was wrong. It was just getting started. I had just finished cleaning up from dinner when I heard the sound of car doors slamming. More than one. I walked slowly to the window, already knowing. There they were. Nathan, Stacy, and my mom, standing at the end of my driveway like they were about to stage an intervention. Lila peeked from behind the hallway wall. Mom, they're here. I nodded once. Go to your room, baby. Don't open the door for anyone. She didn't ask why. She just ran. I waited for the doorbell. It never rang. They didn't think they needed permission. They just walked up and knocked hard like the house still belonged to them. I opened the door halfway and stepped into the frame blocking the entrance. Nathan was holding an envelope. Thick. Yellow. The kind meant to say, official. He shoved it toward me. You owe us $1,200, he said flatly. You ordered the most expensive dishes and then left. You stuck us with the bill. I stared at him for a full beat, then slowly looked down at the envelope, and back up again. That's why you're here, I said. Because of a check, I looked at all three of them. Stacy arms crossed like she was ready for battle. Mom lips pressed so tight she was barely breathing. Nathan still gripping that envelope like it was a weapon. You came all this way to prove I was right to walk away. They didn't answer because they didn't have to. They knew what they were doing. They weren't here for money. They were here for power, to rattle me, to make me feel small, to remind me that no matter how strong I thought I was, they could still show up and take control. But the thing is, that version of me, the one who used to shake at their footsteps, she's gone. So I didn't raise my voice, I didn't cry, I didn't even flinch. I just leaned on the doorframe and said, "You're not getting a dime, and if you ever show up like this again, it won't be me answering the door. It'll be the cops." Nathan's jaw clenched. Stacy scoffed. "Oh, please, Rachel, always so dramatic." I smiled, cold steady. "You haven't seen dramatic, but keep pushing. You're getting close." And with that, I shut the door. Didn't slam it, didn't lock it immediately, just closed it. Because that silence right there on the other side, that's what power sounds like when it shifts. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't on the receiving end of it. The next morning, I called Aunt Clara. She's the only one who's never made me feel small. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. Her voice was calm, but there was a weight to it. like someone who's seen this game played too many times. They're not done, she said. They're testing your limits. Start documenting everything. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Okay, I will. And I did. That same night, I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it Family Fallout. Legal. The name felt ridiculous at first, like something out of a TV drama, but the moment I dragged the first screenshot into it, something shifted. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was preparing. First, I pulled up my texts with Nathan. Can you spot me just until Friday? You're a lifesaver, followed by silence. Every promise to pay me back, never kept. Then, the Venmo receipts, 7 payments, totaling $3,000, labeled things like kids' braces, late rent again. Last time, I swear. I added them all, then the photos. One from the restaurant, 2 empty chairs at the end of the table. No place settings, no menus, no intention of including us. Then the card. Lila had made it the night before the dinner. Hand-drawn, colorful. Happy birthday, Grandma, written in big, careful letters. She handed it to her at the restaurant with a shy smile. My mom had barely glanced at it, slipped it into her purse without a word. That moment replayed in my mind like a glitch I couldn't erase. Lila just sat there pretending not to care, but I saw her shoulders sink. So I scanned the card, saved it as a file, added it to the folder. It wasn't petty. It was proof. Proof of a pattern, of a family that praised each other's cruelty and called it tradition. They wanted to erase me, to paint me as unstable, emotional, difficult. But now, I was the one keeping records. I whispered it under my breath as I clicked save on the folder. They wanted to erase me. Now I'm the record keeper. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't go to bed anxious. I went to bed ready. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. Not frantic, not loud, just steady. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I saw 2 women standing on the porch. Business casual, calm expressions, badges clipped to their shirts. Mrs. Hayes, yes, we're from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip, concerns about possible neglect. I froze. For a full second, I couldn't even hear my own breath. Neglect. I blinked, then stepped aside and motioned them in. My house was spotless. Fridge full, pantry stocked. Lila was at the kitchen table, laughing at something on her iPad, still in her pajamas, syrup on her chin. The CPS workers were polite, professional. They asked to look around, and I said yes. No hesitation, no guilt, because I knew this wasn't about my parenting. It was retaliation. They walked through the rooms, checked the kitchen, the bathroom, Lila's room, her bookshelf overflowing her stuffed animals lined up in a perfect row. Then they asked to speak to her. She came out of the kitchen with that nervous smile kids get when strangers ask too many questions. But she was calm, answered politely, told them about her school, her favorite books, the class hamster she loved. After 10 minutes, they thanked her and asked if she could give us a moment. Lila skipped back to the kitchen, completely unfazed. But I wasn't. One of the agents hesitated near the door, and then she looked at me and said quietly, "You're not the first mom I've seen targeted by her own family." I stared at her, heart pounding, and then I nodded. But I'll be the last in this bloodline to take it. She gave me a look I'll never forget, part sympathy, part respect. Then they left. No follow-up needed, no red flags, just paperwork and protocol. But when I closed that door, my legs finally gave out. I slid to the floor and sat there shaking. Not from fear, from fury, because now they weren't just coming for me. They had come for my daughter. That night, after I put Lila to bed, I didn't pour wine. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, and I called my lawyer. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. I said cease and desist, now. She didn't ask why. She just said, I'll start drafting. Because this wasn't petty. This wasn't dramatic. This was war. And I was done letting them fire shots without consequence. 3 days later, a thick white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. But I knew exactly who it was from before I even opened it. I sat down at the kitchen table, tore the flap open, and pulled out the papers. At the top, in bold black letters, Notice of Petition, Grandparent Visitation Rights. I had to read it twice. Then a third time. My mother was petitioning the court for access to Lila, claiming I was emotionally unstable and vindictive, claiming I had denied them contact without cause, claiming they were the victims. I couldn't breathe for a second. And then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. This wasn't about love. It was never about Lila. It was about control. Again. I called my lawyer, Jenna, and read her the letter word for word. She actually laughed. Rachel, she said they don't have a case. You're not divorced. You're not deceased. You're not unfit. You're a stable single parent. This is nothing but noise. They're trying to scare you into backing down. I didn't even blink. Then let's file a counterclaim. That got her attention. For what she asked. Harassment, I said. Emotional distress. Malicious intent. And while we're at it, I want a no-contact clause filed with the school. Jenna didn't hesitate. Good. I'll draft everything. That night, I emailed Lila's principal. Simple, direct. Effective. Immediately, please do not allow any extended family members to visit, volunteer, or pick up my child from school. This includes her grandparents and uncle. Any attempt to do so should be treated as a security concern. The principal responded within the hour. We understand. Lila's safety comes first. I exhaled. Then I got to work. I changed the locks. Not because I thought they'd actually break in, but because I didn't want to spend another night wondering. And then I did something I'd been meaning to do for a long, long time. I updated my will. Added Aunt Clara as Lila's legal guardian. If anything ever happened to me, she would raise Lila, not the people who tried to weaponize the word family, not the people who sent CPS to my door, then filed court documents like they were invitations to a party. This wasn't just about setting boundaries anymore. This was about protecting my daughter from the legacy of people who confuse control with care. And I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. 1 week later, I packed a small overnight bag, grabbed Lila's favorite hoodie, and we left the city behind. No phones, no emails, no court documents, just trees, wind, and quiet. We drove up to a cabin tucked deep in the mountains. Nothing fancy, but it didn't have to be. It had stillness. It had space to breathe. That's all we needed. That night, we built a fire. Lila roasted marshmallows, her cheeks glowing in the soft orange light. She laughed, really laughed, the kind that sounds like it's never been interrupted. And as she leaned in to toast another one, I reached into my bag. I pulled out a picture frame, one I hadn't looked at in months. It was a photo of me, my mother, and my father. Years ago, before I knew what loyalty really cost. I stared at it for a long time, not out of sadness, out of clarity. And then, without a word, I placed it at the edge of the fire. The flames caught fast, curled the corners, warped the glass, turned the image into ash. Lila looked over, her eyes big, thoughtful. Was that important? She asked softly. I nodded. It used to be. We sat in silence, watching the fire crackle. No tension, no guilt, no fear waiting for me back home. Just marshmallows and smoke, and the quiet knowing that something had ended. But something better had begun. After a while, I leaned in closer and whispered, family isn't who you're born into, it's who doesn't flinch when you say no. Lila smiled, her face lit up by the fire. And for the first time in my adult life, I believed it too. Not because I had to, but because it was finally true. If you've ever had to choose peace over blood, if you've ever walked away from the people who were supposed to protect you, Tell us your story in the comments. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for choosing yourself. We post new stories like this every single day. So, if you found this one powerful, make sure to subscribe and don't miss tomorrow's episode. You never know which story might be the one that finally makes you feel seen. We'll be here every day. Until then, stay strong.